Yeah. So for me, it's 9 o'clock on
I
Sunday
know.
evening.
I
Uh, the
was like, three
the end of
o'clock.
the
That's late.
weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm having a little crafty beer here.
Love it.
A little libation to oil the works, as they say.
Yep. Yep. Totally.
So just to recap, in case someone jumps into this video really quickly, there is a part one where Bill talks about his book and his journey as an author. And what we're getting to in this second part of the interview is the self-publishing route and some hacks, I think, in terms of numbers, right, Bill? Because you're a numbers guy.
I often can be. It's not my specialty, but it's fun when it's your own stuff. So yes, yep, I do like little numbers, and I'm a sales guy, and I live by becomes numbers. If you want to get one person to engage with you, it takes 15 phone calls, typically 20, 30, 40 numbers.
Yeah, right. So let's parlay that down for the
Okay,
average Joe. What are we
yeah.
talking about here?
So in the kind of topic of marketing your stuff, right? Can I start at the highest level? Is that what you want to kind of
Let's jump off right there because
look there? I mean,
let's do it.
so at the highest level, so I've been doing this a long time in terms of sales and whether it's in finance or when I launched my little counseling business, you have to be willing to do more. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable. What do I mean? Like,
Well,
so
what do
for
you mean?
me, you have to be willing to pick up the phone, starting right there, picking up the phone and make 10 phone calls, 11 phone calls, 8 phone calls to people that pretty much don't want to talk to you.
Mm,
Right. So how did that come out in the book? In part one, we talked a little bit about I partnered with that young team that understood the whole Amazon metrics. It's not rocket science. It's basically, when your book comes out, how many purchases are going to be. The only way I did that on his recommendation was to contact everybody I knew. Right. So it's a soft contact because I knew those people. Some people I hadn't talked to in 10 years. And I was texting them and I was calling them and I was emailing saying, do me a favor. And what's ironic and beautiful, Jack, about the human condition is people actually do want to do nice things for other people. Now, people can be assholes. They can be jerks. They can have different political views. They can have different religious views. But in the end, when you boil it down, people actually do want to help you out.
mm.
And so that's ironically, I use that in my professional. I'm sitting here in my Atlanta office. My job is to raise capital. We cold call still like 58 and change. And I'll go cold calling people that I don't know tomorrow. Why? Because I love this statistic. In the next year, anybody in any business, the next year, typically, if you're thriving in the sales world, 30 to 40% of your business, up to 40% of your business will be people you haven't talked to yet today. Think of
Okay.
that. Think of that, right? So if you're trying to sell a book or sell your website, you have this body of people that are your potential clients, but you haven't contacted them yet, right?
Mm,
People are like, oh, sales, I'm just following up. No, you got to always be making new touches, new contacts in order, because those contacts today will bear fruit 3, 8, 12 months from now. And that's the way I looked at it with my book. I didn't care about the outcome. I didn't care about how many books I sold. I cared about every single day. Did I hit enough people that I possibly could, knowing that if you do it enough, we just call it
right,
activity. In our sales world, it's about activity.
right.
And
But to be fair, that is part of your charisma and charm, and that's what you do best. I find you very persuasive anyway. I mean, I would have bought probably 10 of your books, quite frankly. But
and
what
by the way, what's interesting on that note,
I have a
thank you.
copy here. I just want everybody to know that.
And what's interesting in the Amazon metrics, if you went out and bought 90 of my books on October 21st, 2020, when it was launching the next day, it would count as one book. If you bought 10,000, it would count as one book because they track all that, right? They track
Oh,
your
they
email,
don't want people to game
they
the
track your
system.
credit card. Yeah, my nephew bought like 15, and I was like, well, that's excellent. You didn't
Oh
have to do
boy,
that.
bless
This is
him.
super sweet, right? I had another buddy like, dude, I'll just buy 1,000, man. You'll crush him. Like, it's
It's not
one.
how it works, right?
It's not how
Well,
it works. You
can
trust
you
me.
Can you unpack it for us? Because I don't know how it works. Okay. So what is the timeline and what are you saying? Just really make it super
Mhm.
basic for people thinking about doing this
Yep.
self-publishing route.
Yep. Great call. So in terms of once you get it published, once you're ready to go, you create a launch date. So if you're done with all the edits and you're going to self-publish and you're ready to go and you're like, I got about a month left to clean all this stuff up, get all the metrics, get everything done.
Mhm.
So let's just say it's a March 1. March 1, you're ready to go. Now, so you set a date in the future as your launch date. So August 1st. So you basically have whatever that is, 4+ months to 5+ months to do what? To reach out to as many people as you know. Here's the key. If you know 100 people in the world, reach out to them,
Mhm.
all 100. Now, what's interesting is you'll reach out to them, they're your best friends, and they'll forget because they're busy. Everyone's got their own lives. I can't tell you how many times I had to contact close soulmates like, dude, what are you doing? Buy the book. Like, oh, I totally forgot. That's the uncomfortable part, right? Do they really want to hear
Well, you're
from me?
nudging.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they were in the same situation, they know I would do that for them. And that's what it's all about. And even with strangers, I'm telling you, strangers want to help other people out. Cold call people, say, I'll get a guy on the phone. He's like, listen, you got what you're doing sounds interesting. I'm not interested. Here's another person, call them. That's a nice thing. He sets me free. We never
Right.
talk to that guy again. But that's really what you're naturally appealing to is you're doing something, you're launching a book, and people know that getting touches and getting, acquisitions is important. So if you have 100 friends, you contact them and you don't do it once, you don't do it twice, you do it until they acknowledge or tell you to bugger off. Literally, that's our
Did
rule in
anyone
sales.
did anyone just drop you and say, look, you're annoying. I can't.
If they probably did, but they didn't respond to me. And that I totally
And
get. Like,
that,
see,
yeah, that
that's
was it.
I just had this conversation last night with a couple of my young colleagues and younger folks in their late 20s. And they're like, oh, it makes me feel uncomfortable, when somebody I can tell doesn't want to talk to me. Like, absolutely, it still makes me uncomfortable. But you just practice being super nice and super polite and then not caring in a loving way with so much love in my heart. I don't care if that person hangs up the phone on me. And that's how you have,
That
that's how
sounds
you have,
that sounds crazy because you have love in your heart. But what you're saying is, what I hear you saying is you're detached from the outcome, but your heart is pure,
pure,
right?
cheerful. Absolutely. It's the hardest thing I've found after 27
Right.
years of doing work on self. The hardest thing is loving the world with such joy and fullness, and then or not caring what the world thinks of you. I still care how the world thinks of me. Absolutely. But I think I found a place of just comfort in my own bones and skin that somebody's bad opinion of me, and I can feel glances. I'm very intuitive. I know I pick up the phone. That person's like basically about to hang up on me. Mr. Smith, listen, I'm not interested. Click. Does that make me feel bad? No. I mean, I wish I hadn't bugged them, but I'm going to do it 15 more times. Once we get motion of comfort in our own body, we're having shared moments. We're having a shared moment. Can I have a
Right.
shared moment, right? And
Right.
it's fun if you're writing a book, your audience, if they got a book, it's your own stuff. It's like,
Well, that's
put
what
it
people
out
find
there.
hard though, is because it is personal. It's your own stuff, right?
Mm.
You're not raising money capital for a company.
Yep.
It's
Yep. It's
different.
your
The
own
skin,
vulnerability. Yeah,
it's
you're putting
skin
your
in
own
the game,
vulnerability out there.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think there is a technique you can teach people for that. You just have to do it. You have to do it.
You
So
have to do it.
I want
You
to
have
just
to
get
do it.
really clear about this, Bill, because obviously you're inside this and you understand it, but I'm not still understanding it. So let's say March 1st, you decide,
Mhm.
okay, August 1st is when I launch. Now, does that mean that the book is already in Amazon system and you haven't told
Yep.
anybody?
No, well, so yes, so that's a great point. You with your through the self-publishing process, they set up a time with you, right? So now you go into the system and say August 1 is the launch of the book, which means people can people will be able to buy the book, but it's all the pre-orders right? So you direct your friends to the pre-order button. There's a pre-order button where you give them your credit card.
That's the golden ticket. All right.
That's the
That's
golden
what I wanted to
ticket.
get at, because I was like, well, hold on, the book isn't available.
Yeah.
Guys, what we're talking about here is it's the pre-order ticket. Now, Bill raises a really good point. You can't get everybody to do it on the same day and rig the system. It has to appear like a natural algorithm of interest.
Well,
Okay.
here's the thing. If you get all 100 of your friends to pre-order the book that same day, that's not a problem at all, because they're all tied to unique credit cards and unique addresses. So it's when they do, it doesn't matter. Just do it before August 1st, because it's the sales that get released on August 1st is all those pre-orders. The pre-orders done in
Oh,
March,
they
April,
stack
May,
up.
June.
So guys,
stack
your
up.
pre-orders stack up. That's what
Yep.
Bill's saying, right?
Yep.
So remember the
it's like
story. His nephew bought 15 books. Do you guys get it? It's about your IP address. It's about looking like a guy off the street just buying a book, right?
Yep.
Out of pure
Exactly.
interest, because they don't want people rigging the system, right? Obviously,
Correct.
for a
Yeah.
lot of
The system
reasons.
can't be rigged. Yeah. The beautiful thing, the system can't be rigged.
It can't be rigged.
Yep.
So what's the golden number? What's the golden mean?
So I asked that of this young Amazon whiz, and he said 95 or 98% of all books out there never sell more than 50 books, never sell more than 10, 15, 50 books.
How does he know this?
Because he's behind the scenes. This is what this kid's done. He's done phenomenally well.
Okay.
This
is insider information.
No, it's kind of like how many businesses fail, right? How many businesses are there in the US? It's
7 out of 10.
Million.
Is it 7 out of 10?
Oh, well, no, it's 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, right? There's 20 million businesses in America, and we know about, there's 8,000 that are traded publicly, blah, blah. There's not a lot, right? So it's not unusual that, hundreds of thousands of these things that are written aren't sold because there's so many of them. And it's a beautiful thing. People have been writing books for 6,000 years. But it does. So from also another similar topic is I wrote the book for a certain reason. I wanted to get my stuff out there. So did I care if people liked it? Absolutely. Did I want, recognition? Absolutely. In the end, though, I did it for me. I absolutely did it for me. If not a single book was purchased, I swear to God, it didn't matter. For me, once I cleaned up that energy, finished it, it was the release of that energy. Once it was out, published, I almost was like beyond it. People like, the book. I'm like, oh yeah, the book. I had closed that loop. Super proud of it, happy. But it wasn't about how many I was going to sell, and I think it's really important, especially first-time authors, just do it. Just do the process. It's such a good learning process.
Right.
So going back to anyone, finishing up the last pieces so you have an August 1 date, you get as many as your friends and their friends and family to pre-order it. Just pre-order it. What can you do? What else did I do? And this, as we talked about in part 1, this whiz kid said, you can spend $50,000 with me, $15,000. What do you want to spend on marketing? It's not going to matter. On the pre-launch, it's not going to matter. It's all friends and family. Now, I reached out to my college. I reached out to my high school. I reached out to all these points of contact that we don't typically go out and mine and use as a resource. My college sometimes highlights authors. I actually did a Zoom call with another buddy who put a book out. Tim Fry put a book out on Putin. And so we had a chance to chat with 30 of our former college mates, right? So it's fun, like having fun.
Right. That's the main
topic.
thing.
Yeah. And you know what? It's a topic that you're versed in, whatever the book's about, fiction or nonfiction. That's really what people want to hear. They want to hear somebody who spent more than a couple thousand hours on a specific topic, making them an expert. They say 10,000 hours, but if you're expert on something, people want to talk about it for a little bit. That's really important too.
Especially when it's about relationships, because that's very high up for a lot of people. But what I'm trying to get at is, do you know what the math is for becoming an Amazon bestseller? Do you know what that would have to be on the day of the launch? Do you have an idea?
I was told, I don't have the specific number. And I can get that. I can track that down. No, I don't. I really don't.
guys, we'll put that under the video. We'll put that
Yeah.
that golden number because
Yeah.
okay. Basically, what Bill's saying is data, mine, and fall on your sword, ask everybody and their uncle
Yep.
to buy your
Yep.
book. Now, I want to say also that folks, there are plenty of podcasting platforms that have
Mm.
modest followings, but if you stack enough of those up too, and
Yep.
especially if you tie into a subject or an hour or time when people are more likely to be open to it, you can also garner a lot of attention that way, right? Like
Yep.
just
Absolutely.
talking about your
Absolutely.
book.
Yep. I actually very reasonably priced, and they're out there. Hired a little group that guaranteed 10 podcasts a month. And so,
Really?
yep.
Can you
Yep. And I did.
share that information with me afterwards, and we'll
Yep.
pop that up too, give
Yep.
them a little shout out.
Yep. They're actually pretty well, kind of a big name kind of marketing firm out of my price zone, but they had this kind of little subsection where somebody had introduced me to it. It was great. I mean,
Wow.
the podcasts were awesome because
Yeah.
because you had the written stuff, and then getting a chance to kind of expound on a certain topic or a couple topics. I've done what, 40, probably 45, 50, who knows? But it all kind of was spawned by this group that, they guarantee it 10 podcasts a month. And then you
Okay.
can pay a little bit more and get 15 podcasts a month or whatever that is. So
Yeah, and what you're saying is as well, maybe you can sustain the sales, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say, that you've done that?
absolutely. Yep, you do it. I did some before the launch, but right after the launch. So I would actually, given having done, when I do it again, I'll do more pre-launch.
Would you?
Yeah, because that way you kind of, set a little
You're
bit
ahead
of
of it.
a expectation, and you get some interest. So actually, I think where I was just busy getting everything done. I actually hadn't thought about doing podcasts pre-launch, but as soon as it launched, I'm like, oh, shoot, I should go talk about this somewhere. And it's super enjoyable. And when you're forced to talk about it, you're really forced to condense, to outline, get clear, and to hear yourself talk about your own topic. You improve
You get
the way with which
smoother,
you share it.
right?
Yeah, you get used to it. Yeah, because you've been in it for so long in your own little shelter up here. When you kind of let it all out, you're like, wow, okay, that's interesting. And then going back and watching them is pretty funny. I haven't watched all of them, but I've watched a few, and it's got the high energy that you and I love, and it's super fun. Yeah. What else can I share? What else?
Well, hold on a
Would be
minute.
helpful?
So when did you release your book in real time? When was it?
October 22nd, 2020.
Right. So we had the pandemic around that same
Yep.
time, right?
Yep.
So would I be
World.
correct in saying that you have consistently continued to market using similar formula, like reaching out, getting on podcasts, or have you just allowed it to kind of like follow its own pathway?
The latter. So it launched. I mean, my wife, talked to my wife. I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning, probably
Yeah.
the month, almost every night in Austin, right? It was pandemic time, right? So it was like every day's a snow day. The next day I didn't have to go anywhere. I mean, I was still kind of traveling, but it'd be 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd be outside with a beer. I'd be texting guys that I haven't talked to in 5 years, 10 years, some 12 years, who knows? Like, oh, Bill, oh, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just buy the book. I'll pay you back. Just buy the book. And so I did that, aggressively, and then it launched, and then I kind of just literally pulled back. And then beginning of 2021, I decided, you know what? I literally wasn't marketing. I'm like, you know what? I want to talk about it. Somebody's like podcast. So I did the podcast thing for about 3 or 4 months. And since then, really, I do zero marketing. I've sold, actually, what I'm happy about is I sold 70 Audible books, which is kind of cool. And I did the Audible. I recorded my own book, that was a task and a chore in this little.
How did that come about?
When my publisher, one of my contacts, is like, well, you got to have this on Audible. You're gonna have so many people that have no interest in reading the hard copy. I'm like, all right, great point. And then I found a studio in Austin, a record studio, It was during the pandemic, so rates were pretty good. They've tripled since then. And I went in and I read,
Well, you got a great
and
voice.
thank you. Thank you. That was one of the most, vibrationally one of the most intense things. Not easy these are words, some of these words I'd written 10 years ago, right? And so now you're reading them into a microphone.
You're hearing them.
And you're hearing them. And there's times where like I would tear up, or I would be reliving it, and I'd be like, oh God, I screwed that one up, right? And it was cathartic. It was really amazing. And you must do that. Anybody who's written a book, you don't have to necessarily record it yourself, but it's got to be on Audible, period. There's nothing like it has to be.
Would they take care of that if you didn't want to read it? Would they take care of that? Do you have to pay them?
They do have a service where someone else can read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great question. Yeah. It's a must, though. It's really wild.
I think you're right, because I write for a living, and at the end of the day, I listen to audiobooks because I don't want to read, because I've been looking at a screen all day.
Totally. I listen to so much.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a huge
Audible
market.
It's a huge market. Yeah, it's and the quality control they do is pretty intense. I mean, it took almost a month for them to kind of when it finally went up, I'm like, God, it took a while. Actually, it was probably more like 2 months. So yeah, that was fantastic. It's a must. So
get as many, if you can, get as many versions of your book out there as possible. So do you have an ebook, Kindle?
I guess
paperback.
Good question. I don't think I'm on. I guess if you buy it on Amazon, you're buying it through Kindle, right? Is Amazon Kindle the same thing?
Yeah, you probably have it on Kindle. It's automatic, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's ebook. Sure. Yep. What am I talking about?
Ebook. Yep. And then but there's no hardback. It's just a paperback, right?
Just paperback. Yep.
Just paperback.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
And so, just a question here: like, how many people have reached out to you based on the fact that you don't know, never met them, and they've found your book somehow, and they're reaching out? Has anybody done that? Has anybody emailed you? Can they email you?
So yes, not as many, just email random, probably I'd call it 10 over the last 2 years, whatever, year and a half, I don't know, whatever. What was most rewarding, absolutely, really, really amazing for me, was I'd done some of these podcasts, and now it's, I don't know, October, November of 2021. So I did the podcast middle of 2021. And in a 2 or 3 day period, I was getting these emails I probably got 6 or 7 emails. Not probably, I got 4 counseling clients literally in a 1 week time frame, because I had spoken on that Spotify podcast, Relational Advice. And I talked about all the stuff that, I've been ad nauseum talking about for years. And it was these young men and women in their late 20s, early 30s. And I can see and hear and really know their names of these 4 or 5. And the podcast made all the difference. It was in the airwaves. And
that's amazing.
A lot of them I've directed to the book, but I'm like, I can do a counseling session. That's really the fun part, when you go from spending all this time working on a topic, launch it,
application,
talk about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now let's get in there.
That was the experience of Full Cycle. That was like
that's gorgeous.
Beginning, middle, of end. That was very, very rewarding for me. I was honored. Really, that sounds corny, but
no, it's not corny. It's human.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, would you do everything the same again, having gone through this learning curve? What would you do differently, if anything?
First thing that comes to mind, like I said, is do more talking about it. You just reach more people versus not talking about it in any airwave, whether it's I was contacting my local radio stations. I was contacting, let's get out there. So I would definitely do that. I would be more aggressive with getting on the airways, podcasts, et cetera. What else would I change? I couldn't have been more focused on reaching out to friends and family. I mean, I know I've said that now kind of 4 or 5 times in the 2 times we've spoken. Super important. And not only friends and family, but other resources, local papers, all that stuff. Would I change anything else? No, I just would have written the book, 5 years earlier as opposed to after 10 years. So no, I don't think I would have changed anything else. And
That's great.
yeah,
That's
I
amazing
really
because a lot of people
thank you.
do. Yeah. So is there going to
Thank
be a
you.
follow-up to this book? Is there going to be a second edition? What's next for you in terms of this book, Waking Up Marriage?
So now that I'm on the airways and I'm promoting my next thing, I am starting it's called 12 at 12, and it's 12 minutes of meditation with me. I have so many people. We kind of conjured this up a couple of years ago. I just haven't put it. In fact, on the other screen is improving my digital filming skill. So it's not crazy. It's not sexy. I'm not selling anything. I'm going to be doing live 12 minutes of meditation, 12 minutes of sitting quietly at 12 noon. And we're going to do lots of them because everyone's like, how do I improve? How do I grow? How do I get better? Sit, listen, let it come up. I'm going to show you how.
How
So
do we hook up to that then? What's the details?
it has to be created. So we're doing it as we speak.
So I guess we'll be updating at some
You'll be
point.
updated. Yeah. So I'm putting it out in the ether. So the ether's listening so that it actually, we meet up in the middle over the next couple of weeks, but it's been brewing for a while. Super excited about that. It sounds so like simple, but everyone's like, how do I meditate? I'm like, really? How do you meditate?
Well, I think that's not a dumb question. I think a
No,
lot of
not
people
at all.
don't. I think a lot of people
Correct.
don't know how to sit still for 2 minutes, let alone meditate. What about, but so people could probably pre-sign up for this on your website. Am I thinking that's correct? So even if we have no details, we can at least put our email down and say, let us know when you know.
Yes, they will when that is able to be willed through. Yes,
Wow,
thank you. I love
exciting.
it.
And what
I
has
love
that
it.
got to do with waking up marriage? Let's just close on that theme.
So the only way you can understand the outside world, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, teacher, coach, kids, is you have to understand your inside world. It's impossible to know someone else and what they're going through and their inner child longings and desires and sadnesses and joys unless you know your own. Period. I wish it was different. And there isn't a symbol, a story, a word, a religion, a guru that was ever created or ever experienced that wasn't about the exact same thing, understanding oneself. The original symbol of the humankind is the cross with a circular head, not the straight cross. And that's the Ankhs from Egypt, which predates Egypt. And all that is getting the energy to come up and it circulates back down. And all wisdom in the universe is emotion-based. It's sensation-based. It's experience-based. It's not thought-based. So how can I know what your experience is? And so we can relate and I can be vulnerable to you and share my vulnerability for you to share your vulnerability. How could it ever happen if I don't know my own vulnerability? What happens if I put my vulnerability out there and you shut it down? And I'm like, well, that's just her shutting down her own sense of self. I've kind of got my sense of self. So silence is the only way to bubble up the intelligence that's stored in the molecules. It's the only way.
So what we're talking about here is going within before you can go without, right? Outside. So it's an inside, outside job, folks. And there are so many distractions. There are so many things pulling us outside of ourselves that we don't even get to hear our own voice, let alone know what's going on in our inner child and everything else. So Bill's going to be sharing this 12 minutes of meditation technique. Join him. We'll get the details from him. No doubt there'll be a third interview. I hope so, because I'm looking forward to finding out more about this. But in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this. And I wish you, Bill, all the success in the world from the bottom of my heart.
You're the best.